Well, good afternoon, and thank you for checking out another episode of Monkman Talks. Today, I'm working on a King's Guide to Universal Peace. I'm adding an offshoot to it called Pronouncing Delusion, and I haven't written a text for this that I'm going to read to you. I'm just going to freestyle it. I'm working on my storytelling, so I've been studying and looking at a lot of these different ideas and variables, and um, so it should be fairly easy for me to talk about it. But I do need to work on just getting the story out there. And I did write some notes. They're not exactly in order. So as I'm flipping through this, I also tried different color pens to see what would work best. I think the purple works best for what I'm doing. But without talking about pins, let's just get moving on to it. So it's a Monkman Talks, A King's Guide to Universal Peace, Pronouncing Delusion, which means that it's like shining a light on delusion. It's understanding delusion. It's uh, uh, shoot, I'm not sure. It's mastering delusion even. Okay, I hate saying it that way, but it's a mastery. If you understand it as a master, well then no one can trick you. If you're a master of delusion, that doesn't mean that you have to be using it for your own benefit and using it in negative ways. Uh, but you can use it in a positive way to protect yourself and to understand your reality. All right, so we'll start with God's creation. All right, God created everything. We all know that. Um, I don't need to go through everything God created. Here it is. We're born on Earth in Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve, when humans were created, we were created prone to delusion. So you see here, Adam and Eve, when they were created by God, they were created prone to delusion. That was before Satan ever tried to deceive anyone. We were already created prone to delusion. So all Satan had to do was slide right in there with the deception. And because we were prone to delusion, well, we bit onto that deception like it was a worm on a fish hook, or just a worm, and we're a fish and we want to eat that fish. But it turned out it's a false lure because well, it's deceiving. It's not real. It's false. All right. So because we got caught in Satan's deception, well, obviously we fell from grace. We were deceived, and we lost our place in the Garden of Eden, and we were set to suffer in the world. And every day we need to work. We need to work hard to just to get by, really, just to make it through, just to almost equal even. We have to work hard every day, and that's because Adam and Eve, well, they were created prone to delusion, and then Satan came in and filled that vacuum real quick. All right, but you also have to understand that God has delusions too. And I can give you an example where maybe you think that today's Tuesday and not Thursday. So you go to your usual Tuesday spot, and you might meet somebody that changes your life forever. That could be one way God uses delusion to benefit your life. But without that going too far into that, let's talk about man's delusions. I know this is all scribble scrabble. I was kind of planning on writing it again, but it don't matter because we're freestyling. All right, so man's delusions and mass delusion. All right, so I talk about Galilei quite a bit, and it's because Galileo understood through his observations, through provable observations, easy things that can be shown to other people, and they should be able to follow along and be like, oh shoot, you know what, he's right, everything that we're following along here matches with what he's saying. But because man was in a delusion that the earth was the center of everything, well, when Galileo presented his proof that we weren't the center of everything, and in fact the sun was the center of our solar system, it was rejected right away. But again, man's delusions and mass delusion. At the time of Galileo, we were under a mass delusion that the universe was the center of everything. Now, maybe not every culture on earth was under the same delusion, but basically Western culture, all the history that I've learned would tell me that Galileo was the one who discovered that the sun was the center of the solar system. And not only did he discover it, but when he showed it and he talked about it, his freedom was taken away from him for the rest of his life. He would die a prisoner in his own home. He didn't have freedom like the other people around him. His other neighbors had more freedom than him. He was basically on house arrest, and he died that way. And the reason he was on house arrest was because he recognized the truth and he brought it to a delusional mass. All right, and so the court of Galileo looked at his information, and again, because they were in a delusion already, they already thought they knew what was true and what was right. And what the mass thought was that the earth is the center of everything. It's the center of the universe. It's the center of God's creation. And that just wasn't true. But they had a cognitive dissonance, and essentially it didn't matter what Galileo had to say or what he had to show or what he had to prove. Because of their cognitive dissonance, it wasn't ever going to penetrate the wall between Galileo and their brain. It wasn't going to ever get into there so that they could actually think about it and consider it in logical terms. So you had man's delusions. There's a lot of them. One instance of mass delusion that I point out is the fact that everybody, in my history, used to think that the earth was the center of everything, while as the sun was the center. All right. So, I mean, this one gets pretty ugly, right? You got Galileo's freedom was taken away from him, just as I said. All right, and the idea of dissonance and delusion, the reason that the court couldn't understand Galileo was because they had a tumbler. They had a cup, right? And their cup, it wasn't just full. It was full with the lid on. So before any of the people of the court of Galileo could understand his model and understand his observations, and then look up and make the same observations and say, oh, everything he says proves true. Before they could do that, they would have to remove the lid from their cup. There's no way Galileo's information can get into the cup until they remove the lid. So he's showing them a true model of the universe, or at least of the solar system. He's showing them a true model of the solar system. But it can't even penetrate the lid of their cup. So they take away his freedom. They say, you're an idiot. Get out of here. And that's a lot of people. That's a lot of smart people of the day that Galileo was talking to. Yet he still had his freedom taken from him. So what they needed to do, Galileo's court, what they needed to do was they needed to remove their lid so that there was a chance. This is the cognitive dissonance. There's no chance that any information can get into your cup if there's a cognitive dissonance lid in the way. All right, and once you remove the lid, well, you should be. Not everybody is understanding of what's happening with their brain, and I don't know if it's a subconscious or I think you can break it down to a thought process, but not everybody's understanding what's happening. When you remove the lid and you're listening to something different, well, you need to make room. I don't care if they're telling you that they saw that the Earth is not the center of the universe, but the sun is the center of the solar system. I don't care if they're telling you that they saw germs in a microscope. I don't care if they're telling you that they saw a UFO. I don't care if they're telling you that they saw Bigfoot. If you're ever going to listen to the information and weigh it in a logical manner, you have to remove your lid, the lid of cognitive dissonance. You got to remove that lid so that whatever the person's saying isn't immediately rejected, and then you have to make room in your cup. Unless you know everything that has ever existed and will existed, I promise you there's plenty of room in your cup. You just don't understand that there's room in your cup. Most people that I meet haven't ever left the United States of America, and they want to talk about what should happen in other nations around the world, and what we should do over here and what we should do over there, and they've never even left the United States of America to see what life is like outside of our borders. Well, they need to make room in their cup. Well, there's already room, but they don't know it. They think that everything they know is all they need to know. But there's a whole world out there, a whole world of experience, a whole world of information, good information, true information that isn't in your cup because you haven't gone out to experience it, so it's not in there. And then sometimes when people do bring you new information because your lid is on too tight, and because you don't know how to make room, well, that new information doesn't ever get in there. It's good, true information from outside of your nation, or outside of your life, or outside of the world you live in, outside of your language, outside of your culture. Doesn't mean it's not true. So you got to make room for it to evaluate it. So then you receive and evaluate. So this would be like Galileo comes to the court, and the judge should already be in a mindset of having his lid off. All right, maybe not every person in the culture has their lid off, but if you've been appointed to be a judge, well, then you should have your lid off so that new information can come into your brain and help you to decide what's true and what's not true, and what's right and what's wrong. But that's not what happened. They still had their lid. But that's the first thing you need to do. Then they need to make room for the information. They need to evaluate it after they make room. And the receive and evaluate part is, I think it's part of the hardest thing to do myself. This is for me the hardest thing to do, but what I find is the majority of people, this is the hardest thing for them to do. The hardest thing for them to do is to remove their lid and understand they don't know everything there is to know, and then to evaluate that information on a true scale of right and wrong, not what your daddy told you, not what you read in this book over here, not what your boss said you need to do, but actually what you truly believe is right and wrong. That's receiving and evaluate. Most people have trouble with this. This is like the gate, and as soon as the gate is open, the information goes in there. And then they're suddenly receiving and evaluate it. Most people don't even understand this process has happened, where they removed the lid, or whether they kept the lid on and the information just completely bounced off. Most people don't even understand that's happening. All right. But You can break the dissonance and solve delusion if you understand this process of what's happening with your cup. Everyone's cup. Sometimes it's the police officer who pulls you over, and the police officer pulls you over. He says, "Hey, why'd you throw that can out of your car?" Yeah, what are you talking about? I didn't throw a can out of my car. Well, yeah, I saw you do it. Well, I'm not sure what he saw, but I know I didn't throw a can out of my car. So clearly, what he saw is a delusion. And he's unlikely to hear what I have to say because he's got a lid on it. He's already decided that he saw me throw a can at my car. And he's not going to make room for what I'm going to say. And he's never going to evaluate what I say because, well, he saw it. And then that's the lid. That's the cognitive dissonance because he saw it and he's convinced that that's true. I can argue with them all day that I didn't throw a cup out, and we won't ever get past that. We won't ever get past the fact that I didn't throw litter out of my car. He won't ever make room to listen to me because he's already decided, and his cognitive dissonance will not allow anything else to enter. But if you can break the dissonance, if you understand that you have been programmed, it's not really programmed, but you've gone through life and you've made choices, you made decisions, you've experienced things, and because of those experiences, well, this is right. And well, for the most part of all the things that you've done in life, maybe 95% of them are right. But when you're wrong on this 5% of things, well, no one can tell you you're wrong. You're like, what are you talking about? I'm right. Look at all the times I'm right. But the truth is that you are wrong sometimes in life. And because you are wrong sometimes in life, you need to understand that you may be suffering from cognitive dissonance when you're rejecting what another person says. So if a person tells me they saw a UFO, well, I shouldn't put them under a psyche evaluation and take them out of their job flying airplanes just because they said they saw a UFO. Well, now it turns out that our government is releasing UFO documents left and right. Well, how many aviators have been afraid to come forward or have had their jobs diminished because they saw a UFO and because they explained, hey, I saw a UFO. Well, whoever they were talking to had a lid on their cup. They said, oh, there's no such thing as a UFO. You must be sick. So they never made room to listen to the person's account of what happened, to ever receive and evaluate the information. They never even confirmed if Galileo's model was right or wrong. They didn't spend time looking at it. As soon as Galileo told them that the Earth is not the center of the universe, but the sun is the center of the solar system, and the Earth revolves around the sun. As soon as he told them that, it got kicked off the cup. It was going in, it got kicked off because they already know better. And that's the cup. And I could do better for the cup, but eventually, after Galileo's freedom is taken from him and he dies in captivity, essentially, well, the world wakes up. The world wakes up and the world understands that the sun is the center of the solar system. I mean, it really wasn't that important back then, but it's important now, especially as we're looking at traversing space. And how do we get to Mars the fastest, and how do we get here the fastest? Well, now it does matter the position of the Earth in the solar system. It really didn't matter back then. You could wake up and go to sleep and not know what was true, and you would be just fine. But now you need to know what's true because, well, we're at a stage that you got to deal with it. And we're quickly approaching the next stage where it's become second nature to us very quickly. All right, I'm going to pause right there, and then I'll get to my wife's poison. Okay, that's a nice little break for me, but getting back to my wife's poison. So, my wife, she had this mint oil, which was it's for getting rid of pests. You're supposed to put it around your house in certain places to get rid of pests. And she had put it on the spice rack. I'm not sure why she would put poison on the spice rack, but one day I made some tea and I'm like, "Oh, I like some mint in my tea." And I put the mint oil in my tea, and it didn't taste like mint at all. And I, I'm like, "Oh man, this is pretty nasty stuff. I don't." Yeah. So I told her, like, don't ever buy that stuff again. That doesn't taste very good in my tea. And then that's when she told me, "Well, that's poison. You're not supposed to be drinking it." And I mean, we're all just if you're a married man, uh, you probably understand a little more what I'm saying here. And I couldn't believe that my wife knows that I'm sick and I'm fighting illness in different ways, and then she puts poison on the spice rack. And I kind of got into her. I'm like, "What are you doing putting poison on the spice rack? It shouldn't ever go on the spice rack. It should be under the sink. If it doesn't have a picture with the skull and crossbones on it saying that it's poison, then it it should. And it doesn't. But at a minimum, if it doesn't, then if it's not obviously poison, it doesn't have some orange label on there that says poison. Well, then you should put it in a place where people won't confuse it for mint to put in their tea. Just an example. I mean, I like mint sometimes in my rice if I make rice or when I'm cooking food. I like mint in different places. But I did not like the mint oil poison in my tea. And my wife, whenever I brought that up to her, she said it was my fault. So when I confront her with the truth that the mint oil should never be put by the food, well, she didn't want to hear it. She's in what I got there. Shoot, I don't even know why I said Bill. She's in defense mode. More excuses than I can chase. It doesn't matter. Obviously, if you know that poison shouldn't be by your spices, all right. Well, then you're one of the people who already have the right thing in your cup, and you have your lid on the cup, so no one can tell you that poison should be by spices. You just won't open up your lid and let that information in there to stay. You might kick it around and throw it out and be like, "No, poison should not be by spices." But she is convinced that she was right to put the mint oil poison up on the spice rack. She's convinced that she was right and that she did no wrong, and that's where the mint oil should be because she made a decision to put it there. Well, it doesn't mean that her decision was right. And when I confront her with the truth of it, well, again, she's in defense mode. And she's got more excuses than I want to chase. She's got an excuse that, well, you should be reading it, or you should be that, or you should know better, or she just goes on and on with the excuses. As soon as I tell her, well, you shouldn't put poison on the mint rack, she just lets the excuses go out, and there's more squirrels than a dog can chase. So eventually I learned to look at all the squirrels running around, as she's spewing them out, and I stay focused on the true violation. The true violation is that you shouldn't put poison on the mint rack. I don't care how many excuses she has. Wait, I'm gonna pause it. Give me a minute here. I'm not sure what this is. All right, it was a call from American Benefits or something like that. But so she's in defense mode, and it doesn't matter what I say because she don't want to hear it from me. She just literally doesn't want to hear it. She's got cognitive dissonance, and anything I say, well, it can't conflict with what she already has told herself is true and right, which is that it's okay to put poison on the spice rack because she's told herself that's true and right. Anytime I have anything to say about it, it bounces off. Just like the cup here, that's the lid. I say, hey, well, you should not be putting poison on the spice rack, because one of the kids might actually accidentally drink it, not just me. There's a lot of reasons, but it doesn't matter what I say. It just gets rejected because she's got the lid on. And so she can't recognize the truth. I'm telling her the truth. I'm not saying that that she's evil or she's bad or she's mean or she's trying to poison me. I'm not saying that she's trying to blow me up or that they're planning to build a nuclear bomb to exterminate us. I'm not jumping to wild, crazy conclusions that aren't proven. All I'm doing is explaining to her the truth, the proven truth that should be logical to your average person. But she literally can't recognize the truth because her cup is full with preconceived belief, and so lid of dissonance will not allow false beliefs or true beliefs. It won't allow false beliefs to exit or truths to enter. So because she's got her lid on and she believes in her cup that what she did was okay to put poison on the spice rack, well, that belief can't exit the cup because she's got a lid of cognitive dissonance. And there's nothing that I can say that can penetrate that cognitive dissonance. She's got to take the lid off the cup. Or I can point it out to her. I can point out to her that she's got a lid on her cup. But ideally, if she understands how to remove the lid and then make room for what her husband has to say, and then after she makes room, receive and evaluate what her husband has to say, well, then she'll come to the obvious conclusion her husband came to, that you shouldn't be putting poison on the spice rack. Except none of that happened. She's got the lid on tight. She can't recognize truth because her cup is full with preconceived belief that she's right, and so the lid dissonance will not allow false beliefs to exit or truth to enter. And I say I've been arguing with her about this subject for already years now. It's already been a long time, and she still has not admitted that she was wrong. It took her about a year before she had to even listen to me. It was a year of me telling her that you shouldn't put poison on the spice rack before I was able to get in any other word into, well, no, it's your fault, David. It's your fault that you drank the poison. You should have known. It took a year before she finally made a little bit of room to be like, okay, well, why? What else? Let me think about this. That was a long year. Long year. And after I proved to her that it was poison, so she finally got the information. It's like the people in Galileo's court who finally saw the model, and they saw the model work. Well, so I show her, like, look, it says poison. It says here it's poison. It says there it's poison. It says over here it's poison. Everywhere it says that you shouldn't be consuming it, and therefore it shouldn't be on, near the food. And would you want poison in the refrigerator? next to the lettuce? Would you want poison in the noodle box with the noodles? Well, no, she wouldn't want poison in those places. So she finally come to the realization that the poison shouldn't be on the spice rack. Now, even though she came to that realization, she still told me, she said, well, what led me to this was she said that they used to put at her house at home, or she seen people put Vicks Vapor Rub inside their mouth. I mean, I don't know. I never heard of that before. But she said that they would put Vicks Vapor Rub on the back of their throat, inside their mouth, to help them with overcoming whatever sinus infection or illness they may have had, cold, flu, whatever. So right away, it's like, no, that sounds like it's also toxic. It's also dangerous. And sure enough, we look at Google, we pull it up, and consuming Vicks Vapor Rub is also toxic. And so look, here it says right here that you're not supposed to eat Vicks Vapor Rub either. You're not supposed to be putting that in your mouth or down your throat. So to her concept that it was okay to put peppermint oil on the spice rack was connected to her concept that it was okay to put Vicks Vapor Rub on the back of your throat. And again, I point out to her, you're just reaching. This is your cognitive dissonance, just reaching for an excuse to help you feel better why you're right, because you don't want to acknowledge that you're wrong. You're literally rejecting the truth so much that after all this horse crap, you're still telling me what led me to this was, what led me to thinking that it was okay to have poison in the spice rack was because we used Vicks Vapor Rub on, inside our throat as a child. Well, so she's still not recognizing she was misled. Again, we looked at the Vicks Vapor Rub. You're not ever supposed to consume it. It's toxic to you. You're not supposed to eat it. But that's what she was basing the foundation of her choice off of. So when I broke it down with her, that, as she said it, what led me to this, I said, no, you need to understand. You need to, you're still not recognize that you were misled. The proper language, if she had her cognitive dissonance removed, and if she made room in her cup, and if she evaluated the truth and understood the truth, then she would say, well, what misled me to believe that it was okay to have poisonous oil in the spice rack was because when I was a child, they gave us Vicks Vapor Rub inside our mouth. It's a mislead when you understand that the poison on the spice rack is poison, and when you understand that the vapor rub is also toxic and poisonous. Well, then you must understand you were misled from the beginning. If you don't ever understand you are misled from the beginning, well, then it becomes difficult for people to remove the lid of cognitive dissonance, to break the dissonance. And if they don't ever remove the lid, well, then they won't ever make room for additional facts. Some facts are true. And if they don't ever make room for that information, well, they'll never receive and evaluate it, and they'll never solve the delusion they're in. So my wife has been in a delusion for a long time that it's perfectly okay to put poison on the spice rack. Well, because she was misled to thinking that it was okay to put certain substances in the kitchen and in your throat. And it turns out that all of it was toxic. All right, so with my wife, her cognitive dissonance lid is still in place. I promise you that I have not removed the lid of cognitive dissonance. there's plenty of things I say as her husband that just bounce off because, well, my husband can't say anything right. My husband don't know what he's doing. My husband, it don't matter what I've proven and what I've done in my past. She's got this lid of cognitive dissonance that no man can tell her anything right. I'm assuming. But I pried it open and I got this information in there, and we'll see where it goes. So you need to understand your cup is full, but first understand your lid is on. So her cup was full. I couldn't get any information in there. It didn't matter, but it didn't matter because I needed to get past her cognitive dissonance. I don't know how many times I've been talking to her about stuff like this, and she's like, "Well, you just talk in circles. You just talk in circles. You don't say anything important. You just keep talking in circles." And I was like, "Okay, well then tell me what I just said." And she couldn't do it. She couldn't tell me what I just said. And I'm like, "All right, well, you said you're listening. You said I'm talking in circles. Well, then you should have listened in circles, and therefore you should be able to repeat to me what I said, except you can't even repeat to me what I said, which tells me that the lid is on. Nothing got in. Absolutely nothing. Even though I talked in circles, it was all bouncing off. She recognized that I was talking in circles, but she didn't gather any of the meaning of what I had to say. And the reason she didn't gather any of the meaning of what I had to say is because she had her lid on. And it takes her to remove the lid and make room before she could ever receive and evaluate what I say to repeat it back to me. Even if I talk in circles, she can't receive it and evaluate it and repeat it back to me because she hasn't removed the lid and she hasn't made room in her cup. Now, maybe you think I'm picking on my wife. I mean, I don't know that I'm picking on her, but maybe you think I'm picking on her. I would have to say that if you read my writings, my pursuit of the illusion started with her. She's my favorite test subject. It makes my work more pleasurable that I get to work on my wife's delusions and my wife's cognitive dissonance. And I can dissect it with her. I need to. It's my responsibility, but it will also help to bring peace to my life that I've done this, is what I'm hoping for anyway. All right, I'm going to take another break. We're almost at 40 minutes here. It's a lot longer than I expected. I mean, just a few pages of notes, but here comes another break. So you go ahead and take a break too, is what I suggest. All right, well, thank you for being patient. I had a good break. And so basically, I kind of left off that my wife is still not recognizing that she was misled by whatever preconception she had already in her brain. Whatever she thought was true in her brain wasn't true. And she was acting as though it was true. And so because she was acting as though it was true, she thought that the next action she was taking was correct and right. But that was not the case at all. And she didn't understand it. And it took her opening her cup lid and realizing she was misled from the beginning after evaluating the information. It was information that's been there for the last 2 years, but we've been arguing about it over and over and over. I don't know, several times a week, probably even. Because I've been prying on it. I've been prying to get the lid open. And I finally did it. All right. So there it is. But now it may be pried open. Imagine, I kind of wrote a few things in here, but imagine if when Satan came to Eve, he said, "Hey, Eve, you should put this poison up on the spice rack." Adam would be already dead. There wouldn't be a human population in existence. All Satan had to do, all the serpent had to do, was convince Eve that it was perfectly acceptable to put a poison on the spice rack called peppermint oil. And you know what? Because Adam's born prone to delusion, well, he's going to be like, "Oh man, peppermint oil, that sounds like it's good to put in my tea." And he put it in his tea, and then he's dead. That's it. Done. Satan don't have no more problems. But it didn't happen that way. So that's why I wrote that in there. So understand your cup is full, but first understand your lid is on. That's all of you. Almost every person I talk to, their cup is full already and their lid is on. So even if I can crack into their decision-making process, that this may be important, that I may be somebody to listen to, that's worked on it and figured some things out. Even if I do that, well, their cup is still full. So it's still full of whatever information they thought was true. And so before they can get that out of that cup, it's either got to be disproved. But the truth is, the only thing that needs to happen is the information I'm putting into the cup needs to be proven. I don't have to disprove anything. They don't have to disprove anything. They can keep all their crazy information in their cup and then just let what I'm putting in be put in there so it can be evaluated and proven or disproven. But that usually doesn't happen. Understand your cup is full, but first understand your lid is on. Then you might begin to understand Galileo and his proof that you once dismissed as impossible. So, if Galileo's court was able to remove their lid and understand there's plenty of room in their cup because they don't know everything there is to know. So their cup really is designed to hold everything there is to know, but they don't know everything. So once they recognize that, they should understand that really they're down to about this level in the understanding reality, and that there's so much more room for the things they haven't experienced and the foods they haven't tasted and the sights they haven't seen and the smells they haven't smelled. There's so much more room. The medicines that exist in other places that can heal stuff that you've been trying to heal for a long time. It goes on and on and on. But if you have your cup on, or if you have your lid on, and your cup is full, like you believe there's nothing else in the world for you to learn, well, then you're not ever gonna learn. All right. And I got on here my last point, meeting my wife. And I mean, again, I like to, at this point, kind of revert to my wife because she's the one who set me down on this path to solving delusion. And when I met her, I was working security at a movie theater, and she was cleaning the theater. Like, I saw her pushing the cart, and I'm like, "Oh, who's that lady? What's going on?" And I went and talked to her, and I got her phone number, and she got my phone number, and we scheduled a date. Well, on my first date with my wife, sitting in that same theater, we're eating pretzels and nachos and stuff like that out in the lobby before the film, and it was obvious to me, just in a brief conversation, it was very obvious to me that she was an illegal immigrant. She wasn't supposed to be here. And I had been raised to think that illegal immigrants in general, like, get out of here. You're taking our jobs, you're taking our money, you're taking our housing, you're taking our this, you're taking our that. And when I met my wife, I come to understand that I had been wrong in my perception of illegal immigrants immediately, just the moment I met her. Now, if I was over here with my lid on, then as soon as I realized she was an illegal immigrant, it would have bounced off. I would have been calling ICE. I would have been calling the police. I would have been like, no, I can't talk to you anymore. Except I was able to very easily remove my lid, and I made room to listen to what she had to say. And I found a compassion that I was unaware of, and I found information that I was unaware of. and I received and I evaluated that information, and I found it to be true. So what I knew, what my dad had programmed me to think, wasn't true. And I quickly understood that. Well, now she's my wife, right? So we know how that ended up. I was able to breach and break the cognitive dissonance, the lid on my cup, very easily. As soon as I talked to her, I was already ready. Maybe my lid was already open. Maybe I don't have a lid. I don't know. It went in so naturally and so fast. And I turned my whole perspective about illegal immigration and illegal immigrants around quickly, within seconds of understanding that my wife was an illegal immigrant. And she's the first illegal immigrant that I ever met. Now, I've gone to school in Floresville, and I probably have friends that were also illegal immigrants or children of illegal immigrants, or however you want to look at it. I probably met them, but I never understood when I was meeting them. They were just my friends. They're just classmates, schoolmates. I wasn't evaluating what they had to say or what they were doing with the rest of their life. I wasn't doing any of that. We were just living together in school. When I met my wife and I asked her about her future plans and about what she's been doing and about what she wants out of life, it was clear and obvious to me that she was an illegal immigrant. And sure enough, my whole concept of what an illegal immigrant is changed in that moment. And I mean, there's a lot more that I could talk about regarding cognitive dissonance. I'm not an expert. I won't even pretend to be an expert. I just really learned how to spell cognitive dissonance 2 weeks ago. I didn't even know how to spell it before then. But I understand where it fits in the larger picture of things. Maybe I understand how it fits in the larger picture of things because I don't have a lid on my cup, and I understand that I don't know everything there is to know. So when I hear a term cognitive dissonance, and I'm very receptive to learning what that means and how that applies to everything and how I can use it to understand everything. Whereas I find a lot of people are so shut down, they're so closed off, and they got the lid on tight, and they don't want anybody into their compound because what I know is better than what you know, and you don't need to get in my life. I mean, that's just not me, apparently. I guess it's just not my nature. I'm not sure what it is, but again, I used to 100% believe that every immigrant and every illegal immigrant needed to go back to Mexico. At this time in my life, I wasn't even thinking about any other immigrants besides Mexico. I was just thinking about what the news told me and what my dad told me and what I experienced in my life. But there are illegal immigrants and immigrants from all over the world, and they all have different understandings and different perspectives and different things to share, different recipes, different homemade cures. And the best thing we could do is to bring it all into the cup, evaluate all of it, figure out what's working best, and then hold on to that. Well, I think I'm coming up to an hour here. No, it's about 50 minutes, but I'm going to call it quits. And that's all for a few pages of notes for Monkman Talks, A King's Guide to Universal Peace, Pronouncing Delusion. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to highlight and bring to your attention the delusion that you are under, that I was under, that I am under. I'm still looking around for different delusions that I may be under. And not only just talking about them, figuring out how we were in delusion in the first place. What made us think that the earth was the center of everything? And even when Galileo brought proof, observable proof that anyone could observe that the sun is not the center I'm sorry, that the Earth is not the center of the solar system, but the sun is the center, we still dismissed it. It still bounced off everyone's cup. It didn't even really go in there, because if it went in there, you would think it would mix, and that we would consider it and we would reflect on it and we would figure out, oh, well, that's true. Kick out the falsehood, keep the truth. But it didn't even, the truth didn't even get into the cup. It bounced right off. So I hope this helps explain delusion in your life, and cognitive dissonance. And like, so I, part of the reason that I also put this up is because I just put out a King's Guide to Universal Peace, the Charged Future Variables. And it's, I almost feel like that's going to be rejected almost immediately by the majority of human beings. The majority of people out there will read my work on charged future variables, and I didn't read it as well as I wanted to. That's why I'm working on my storytelling right now. But I didn't read it as well as I wanted to. But if you read it, watch the video, and you read what I have up there, and then put it, like, make sure the lid's off your cup, and make sure it's in your cup, and think about it in a methodical manner to prove or disprove what's true. And you may find out that what I've got to say is true, or you may be able to tell me what I've done or what I've made a mistake on that makes my equation untrue. All right. Well, thank you for sticking with me, and we'll see you again. I'm probably gonna do more of these freestyles. I rather work on this than work on typing long, dry readings.